Welcome back into another new episode of Tribal Council Chat. We are super excited for this. As always, we're your host. My name is Bruce Heller.
And my name's Brett Parnell.
And we, of course, have the premiere of Survivor 47. And this is a first for us, sort of. We've had former Survivor players on the show. We've done plenty of episode recaps. We've never had a former player on to do an episode recap with us until now, and this is one Brett and you and I have been looking forward to for a while. I'm not sure how, but she found our show early last season and started commenting on YouTube and interacting with our socials and everything. Requested a bunch of these stickers when we were giving them out, and that's Liz Wilcox. Welcome to the show, Liz. We're super happy you're here.
Hey
Yeah, welcome,
friends,
Liz.
I am so excited to recap episode 1 of season 40 several. Let's go.
Yeah.
And also, Bruce did not mention it, but one thing I thought of just this morning is you have now become our first new era contestant to be on this show.
Oh, that's right.
Yay. Awesome. Well, I feel super honored and privileged. I was saying before we hit record that I just love Bruce and Brett's vibe. It's just like calm and thoughtful. And heck yeah, I've got a sticker. This is gonna be so fun.
So, as we kind of dive in, what are everyone's just general thoughts on this episode?
I think it's gonna be interesting. I think unlike what we've seen before, and I guess a little concerned with how it played out, but I think going into this season we have a very even group of players. So I'm curious to know how these tribes are actually going to break down when certain people start losing challenges. That was at least my initial reaction to seeing the marooning and seeing the players on our screen for the first
Yeah.
time.
For me,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay, so for me, of course, I just got done playing, right? So
Right.
our season is over and this one is beginning. And to be honest, I was so over it. I really didn't want to watch. I knew I had this recap coming with the guys, and I was like, I'm going to watch because, that's the thing you got to do. And I'm a huge Survivor fan.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, I watched the episode and I loved it. I think this is the best premiere
Wow.
in recent memory, probably since Winners of War. Maybe I also loved season 41 premiere because it was just so different and new,
Yeah.
and it was like, yes, we're back, so that was just exciting in itself. But I thought like, wow, if this gets me hyped, this must be a really good episode because honestly, I'm pretty burnt out on
Fair.
Survivor. I was just at my daughter's school and I got stopped to like 3 times. Oh my gosh, is that you, Liz? But as far as the players go, like Brett said, it seems like a good mix. But at the same time, for me, I watched some of the preseason. I'm watching the episode, and aside from a few players, everyone seems like Survivor is their job, if that makes sense. It's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I'm here. I came to play, check. Like everyone kind of seems like this logical, progressive type of mindset, I guess you could say. And I
Yeah.
just love that there's a few hot messes among the mix. Because I
Yeah.
feel like our season was all hot mess with like a few logical thinkers. Shout out Charlie.
Yeah.
But and everyone else was just like super random. I mean, even our final four, right? That was like so random of
Yeah.
people. And so I'm so glad that among all this, like Brett said, like this even keel, people are ready to go. People seem really like smart. There are a couple hot messes because I think that's going to make it really fun.
Yeah.
Oh, it always does.
The fun thing with your all's cast too was there was the logical thinkers like Charlie, but you guys also just gave us so many quotable moments from several to a million hearts to admittedly you at the couch
I'm
where you were ticked off with
Yeah.
you. Like there was so many just funny quotes from your season too.
Yeah, I think we're gearing up for another weird season.
Yeah.
That's kind of my vibe. What did you think, Bruce? What was
I
your first impression?
My first impression, and I think this is going to be a really strong cast, which the past 2 seasons, you guys and 45 were both just casts that I thought were fantastic. Like, the first time we see a contestant talk is Sam saying, "You always see people say they're a wolf in sheep's clothing, but I'm gonna be a wolf in wolf's clothing."
Yeah, I like
Like,
that.
right off the bat, I'm like, "Okay, this is gonna be a fun season." Then Teeny at the marooning just calling her own clothing that she picked scarecrow attire made me
Can
laugh.
I just say, sorry to interrupt. That I was like, tell me you hated what production picked for you without telling me. Because it was like, of course, what I wore, those are all my clothes, but they
Yeah,
kind of mismatched them. And it was like, well, I only sent that one last minute because they asked for 4 pieces. And really those were my top three though. And so I was like, she probably feels like maybe she shouldn't have worn these pants. So
yeah.
I loved that.
And Probst's monologue at the marooning, it's the same thing every time, but it always gets me excited because I haven't had this show on my screen in what feels like forever. So like that makes me smile every time, even though his like monologue explaining the game to a bunch of super fans that already know what he's saying. It's the same thing every time, but it gets me excited still. So that made me
Yeah.
smile. But we go right into this challenge, which for an opening marooning challenge, this is huge, like size wise.
Yeah.
I loved it. Did you guys love it?
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
the
It
puzzle.
felt old school.
Yeah, was this the one with like the rectangle? Yeah, this was that puzzle because the other one was the logo. I love this puzzle where it's like a box essentially, but
Yeah, I thought it was super smart and even like as a player, that how cool would that be to meet Jeff and then he kind of ushers you into something else. Because
yeah,
for us, like we could see the challenge, like it was behind us, but we saw it coming in, we're looking behind us, and so you
You're
can't even
having all that
see.
time to try to figure out what
Right.
you're about to do before, well, Jeff is talking and the cameras are doing what they do, and it probably takes a lot longer than we see. Whereas they were
Right.
just, oh, this is it, let's go.
Yeah, so I loved that he ushered them in. It felt more exciting even for us as the viewers of like, "Oh, we can't see what's about to happen," right?
yeah.
So I can only imagine as a player how it felt.
And the way this challenge worked was like they had to go under this net through the mud, then run into the woods and get the puzzle pieces, then come back. Gada, the yellow tribe, is kind of distantly the last tribe to start on this puzzle in the last stage of the challenge, and they win. That was such a fun comeback to watch. They flew through that puzzle.
That was so fun, and I remember, because they always like sometimes they'll subtitle what people say, right? And
Yeah,
you're like, "Oh, that's something I have to know what they said. That's important later." And they subtitled John saying something like, "Oh, we're not working together well," or something like that. And then they got the puzzle so quickly. My first thought was, like don't judge too quickly.
yeah.
Like you're already super down on something that hasn't happened yet. Like don't try to predict the future in Survivor because you never freaking know.
Yeah.
So Gada wins the reward. They get tribe supplies, which is like I forget what it was. It was like a
Flint and
pot and
pot.
machete and something else. But that'll help them get a head start in building camp. The other two tribes each get to elect one person for a task, and this time, unlike seasons past, they have no idea what it is. And this is
I love this change.
I love this. Like Sweat versus Savvy was fun, the different
Yeah.
ways they've done that, but I like this. It's something new.
I love it too. And I know, on Entertainment Weekly or something, they said, oh, they've done away with Sweat versus Savvy. And so it was like, what is coming? And I don't know about you guys, but I thought, oh, they're just going to give everyone supplies or something. And maybe we'll have an extra reward challenge or something.
Yeah.
But I
Before
was
they
way
walked
off.
into the challenge, I was thinking that because there was no challenge there, like we just talked about. But
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was they hoodwinked us. But I liked it too, and I thought it was cool because you're meeting someone on a separate tribe. So it's like, oh, Bruce, nice to meet you. Let's team up. And then it's like, oh, you have to go against each other. And now all of a sudden you have to completely switch gears from trying to, form some sort of bond really quick to, okay, now I have to kick your you know what.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if we ever do have some sort of swap or even at the merge, 10 seconds, 20 seconds of knowing somebody is better than nothing.
True.
That's true, but I will say, and I'm skipping ahead to the end of that task where Asia tries to like kind of tackle TK. I thought that was so cool, very reminiscent of, them watching, what was it, Treasure Island, and Amanda's like, "Give me that bat."
Yes.
Whatever. But I was like, "Oh my gosh, are we about to have a showdown?" So I don't know if it was me playing, and maybe you guys have a different opinion, if I would like that person if they tried to like tackle me, if they
That's
tried
a
to,
good point.
I might be like, oh, they're slimy. They try to be slick. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if it was good in the moment. I would do it too, but it might come back to be like, oh, well, she's slimy. She tried to come behind me, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good point.
So after leaving the challenge, we get to Gada's camp, and this quote from Andy, like we pretty much learned this was on par for him later in the episode, but this quote from Andy is, "If I can bond with 2 people, then I feel safer because it'd be hard to get 4 people to vote me." I'm like, yeah, that's kind of how the math works. If you have 3, you can't get 4 to vote you out. But I
I thought
like it.
that part was hilarious. I was like, they are
Yeah,
already clowning on this guy with the math, and it's like equals 15. And it's like,
yeah,
what is he even talking about? Andy is a really interesting character, isn't
yeah,
he? Like, on one hand, I really feel for Andy because
yeah,
I felt the same way. Like, immediately getting on the island, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't fit in. I'm kind of, and I'm not old. I'm 36. I was 35 at the time, but I felt old. I felt tired. I felt like, Soda and Tevin are bonding so quickly, and they both really like Hunter, and everyone likes Hunter. And so Andy math, the math ain't Andy mathing for me
yeah,
and Venus, and my defense mechanisms like his went up, and I was in turn everything he's saying to the cameras, I was saying very similar things. Um, but at the same time, I know as a player, you've got to kind of swallow that and get over it and say, okay, well, I can sit here and cry about it, or I can try to weasel my way into these people. Right. And I think he's
yeah,
so obsessed with this 2 number that he's forgetting about the other 3 people that he could be trying to vibe with at the same time.
yeah.
Very
And
true.
one of the people that was gonna be one of his 2 allies, and we'll get to this episode part of the episode later, but openly says in front of 18 castaways, "I was planning to throw him under the bus if we lost the challenge." So
Oh my, shake my head. Andy's
one of your 2 you're already off to a bad start with. But and then right after Andy says this, we see him and John kind of going away, bonding into the woods. And back at camp, they're immediately noticing, like, yeah, the 2 of them are already going off alone. So not a great start for these 2, I guess, trying to blend in.
Yeah, what do you think, Brett?
Yeah. Not a great start from the tribal perspective. I did really like that scene
Yeah.
because we get this bonding moment between 2 people who share the fact that they're both part of the LGBT community. And that was great on television, but also the math, just like we said, doesn't work out when you need to be on the 4, not in the 2.
Yeah, and just it seems like going off with 1 or 2 people in the woods on day 1 like that always seems like a bad idea.
Yeah.
People always notice the 1 or 2 people are gone.
Yeah.
Except for Game Changers, when Tony said, "Hey, I'm gonna go idol hunting," they usually don't announce it, so you look
Yeah.
silly also.
Yeah, it's such a weird thing because at the same time you have to go off. Like if you look at that scene of Andy and John, they're getting wood. It's not like they're just, like just hanging out in the woods. It's a very busy day. Like, I literally can not remember day one other than the challenge, like some meet and greet, me saying, I'm pretty awesome. And then, like, going to sleep. I barely even
Yeah.
remember that day. I don't remember anyone going off. I don't even remember the vibe of that day. It's just such a blur. And so, to me, when I see people talking like, oh, well, they're going off as a 2, I'm like, oh, that's the person I'm scared of because they're already paranoid. If
Yeah.
you're paranoid in the beginning, it's going to be a long 26 days for you.
Yeah.
I also love how Survivor online community somehow turned you saying you're awesome into you saying you're a millionaire or a billionaire or whatever the joke was throughout the season on Twitter.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know
I don't
where
know.
that came from, but that joke pretty much stayed around the whole season.
I love that. Side note, I just got announced to speak at an event. And in the last sentence in it is like, and she will reveal if she's actually a billionaire or something like that.
That,
So I hope there's bringing it back to this season. I hope there's something
yeah,
as iconic and ridiculous as that because
yeah,
it's fun.
yeah. That and the one where they were convinced you and Mariah were the same person, and those memes were also great.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. I kept getting Gabe and Andy confused, and
I
they
could
don't
see
look
that.
alike, but I just, like the shot to the blue tribe, shot to the yellow
Yeah,
tribe,
Yeah.
and I'm
I
skipping
noticed that.
ahead, but when I thought Andy was in trouble for tribal, I was like, well, that's fine. He has an idol. And my daughter was like, no, he doesn't. I'm like, hang on. And I'm having to pull up the cast. I'm like, oh, that's Gabe. Okay. They don't look alike. I don't know why I thought that. Cause I was like, he's fine.
yeah.
This episode's going to be so juicy.
Well, and Gabe, to be fair, Gabe was kind of messy with his idol and finding it, as we'll get to. But
Yeah.
that's a great transition because the next scene we have, we're going to Tuku, to the Blue Tribe, and Gabe is saying, and I love this strategy from him, he wants to work with someone a little bit older and mature because he says a more mature, older person will know how to operate without getting caught up in the social games. And they can be running game while everyone else is gossiping and clicking together, I think was how he put it.
I love that. Brett, what did you think about that?
Yeah, I really like that. I did notice that, like we were just saying, that that mix was a little difficult to figure out as well. But Gabe has definitely been an interesting character in that tribe. How the idols played out was very interesting to see them, whether especially that question of whether they wanted to extend it. I really liked because it's both putting the castaways in this difficult situation of, do I want to risk it for something more powerful? But at the same time, as we saw last season, sometimes an idol that goes to the end of the game might be a little too powerful for your own good.
Yeah.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, those idols I see in this episode, people, almost risking their whole lives on day 2 for an idol. And I'm like, did you not just see what happened? And of course, they didn't see Q go home with an idol, but they saw Jem, they saw Hunter, they saw Tiff. Was there
All in a
somebody
row.
else?
It was like 4 in a row, wasn't it?
Yeah, they saw someone. I see. I can't even remember, and I was literally there. Like, I was
Same.
literally there. And it's just like, what are you doing? Like, you're dropping the box down the hill, Gabe. Like,
Yeah.
you can do this at night. People will be sleeping, or in the morning. You can say you're gonna go look for coconuts in the first few days. It's not that suspicious. Like, slow down, baby. You're going too
Exactly.
Yeah.
fast.
I see why you. They may not look like. I get why you would confuse him and Andy though, because they both kind of had very messy episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were both kind of all over the place, but I do agree to bring it back about Gabe wanting to work with Sue
Yeah.
and her being like older, more calm. That was something I was looking for. And I think one of the reasons Kenzie and I got along so well is because, like, we're very confident in ourselves and we don't just change our minds like on a whim. It's like what we say is what we say. More level-headed. And I know I didn't look level-headed, but I swear
Yeah.
for the most part I tried to be. But yeah, it's so important to find that person that feels calm out there. And I feel like that's not said a lot, but I think Gabe did a good job of expressing that, like why he was attracted to her as
Yeah.
And
a potential
I really
partner.
like that too in the newer game, and we saw this with Julie in 45 and maybe with Sue again, that we're seeing people with these ideas like Gabe expressed that aren't just automatically, okay, who's the oldest person here is going to be the person who goes first. We saw Julie go far. We saw Mike go far in 42 into his 60s.
And
It's
Gabler
that,
won.
yeah, exactly.
Maria got 5th place. Julie
Yeah.
got 5th place.
And it's not just Gabe that Sue wants to work with Sue either. Sue, like in the next scene, has Caroline saying, "You're my number one" to Sue also. So
Yeah.
Sue's in a really
Yeah, she's in a good,
right
she's in a good, yeah, for sure. She's in a good position. And I personally loved when Sue said, like, oh, my daughter Chelsea, you know, because I have a daughter named Chelsea. And I was like, oh, that's so fun.
That's
I
funny.
can't wait to meet her. Like, we'll have to get pictures with like Chelsea and Chelsea. I think that'd be so cool.
Yeah, that would be.
I love this blue tribe so far. They're vibing so far, it seems like.
I think so, but I think, well, you're wearing a Sega buff, so that would make sense why you like them. Because I like the
Yeah.
drama. I'm like, kind of boring, other than Gabe like falling down the hill or whatever.
I love both. I kind of base what buff I buy each season based off of what color I don't have yet, and I didn't have a green one yet, and I've already ordered a Gato one because I don't have a yellow one. So
Love it. Love it.
So yeah, it's moving forward to Lavo. Right off the bat, we see, and I love Teeny in
Yeah.
this whole scene, but we see Keyshawn and Teeny bonding really quickly. And she says, like, he's a good yin to her yang, and they're kind of opposites in a few ways, but that can be a good thing. And I love this thought process.
Yeah, that
Yeah, that's super
absolutely
smart.
can be a good thing. Both in terms of balancing each other out and having different mindsets that can go towards thinking about what would actually be the best decision, but also players that are very different will be less suspecting to be working together early on.
Yeah, for sure. And a quote we get from Teeny is she says she's going to play by being everyone's number one, which I love the concept and like building bonds like that. But if people start to compare notes, and if you're telling people they're your number one, you kind of get the scene from Swati in 42 where they compared notes and they all realized she told all of them they were her number one. So I like the thought process behind this strategy. I just think Teeny kind of needs to be careful with how she deploys it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
amen. So for me, it was less about being your number one and more about you thinking that I had nowhere else to go. Right. So it's like, oh, let's just put her, she's in my pocket. And so I think it's dangerous to try to be everyone's number one, just like Bruce said, if they're comparing notes, like, my friend, you're going to be, you and your scarecrow might not be so scary anymore. Right.
Yeah.
So I hope that they deploy it in a way that's more of, oh, Brett thinks I've got his back. Bruce thinks I've got his back versus Brett thinks I'm his number one. Because if Brett tells Bruce that and Bruce thinks the same thing, Brett and Bruce are suddenly friends and I'm out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely, hopefully they deploy it in a way.
I was wondering
that's
if something
delicate.
like that could go on as what I was going to bring up next in this. We see them trying to make that 2 a 4, but there seems to be a difference in, okay, Genevieve is the 3, or Genevieve, I mean. But then whether that fourth person should be Keyshawn or should be Rome seems to be dividing this tribe, and you never know where promises might start going all over the place.
Yeah, I actually
Sorry,
love.
not I mean to say Asia, not Keyshawn. He's number 2, as we know.
Oh,
I
right.
repeated a name.
Right.
Yeah.
Asia
I
was
actually
off on trying to get a potted machete and flint at the time.
Right. I actually love, love, love that teeny when Genevieve was like, oh, and then Rome's our fourth or whatever, that they stuck up for themselves and was like, oh, actually, let's give Asia a chance. That was
Yeah.
a really perfect way of saying, like, I'm with you, but like, let's slow down,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
instead of, because you can get caught up. It's the first few days. You're like, if anybody's willing to work with me, I'm going to say yes, like that. I'm sure
Exactly.
that's the vibe. Right. So I thought that was actually something that like turned my ear where I was like, oh, maybe Teeny is very smart, because that was a very diplomatic way of saying no without saying no. And
Yeah.
I loved it. And I'm not sure if Genevieve caught on to it.
Yeah. And so I guess it's interesting to me that Genevieve, like the first thing we see from Genevieve is her talking about how good of a first impression she got from Rome. Because the rest of the scenes we see from Lavo Camp is just Rome being arguably the messiest player on an episode where Andy has his episode. Like, Rome was just kind of wild and out there. But we teased it earlier. Let's get to the task. So, unlike Sweat versus Savvy, or I think unlike, did they call it Sweat versus Savvy and it was just they did it Yours was at the camp. I remember that now because he threw the
Yeah.
He threw the
So,
hourglass.
yeah.
45
So
was the weird one where like they went off in the woods, but
I think so. Yeah.
only one of the two can get it this time.
Yeah.
And they're racing against each other through the woods to get 3 keys each for this box. And a single 4th key exists. And the first one to get it wins. This was fun to watch.
It was. And I like that too, where you said only one of them can get it. The other thing I picked up there that's along the same lines is one of them will get it. So we
Yeah.
know we're going to have a winning tribe and a losing tribe, as opposed to potentially nobody getting it or both tribes getting it.
And it was
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
evenly matched the whole time. One thing I love, and he ends up winning, so this may or may not have been the difference, is once TK realizes the final key is in the water, he goes off the path and just straight line through the woods to the beach and to the water. While he's doing that, we see Asia kind of getting lost on the path, trying to find the path for a second. So
Yeah,
smart move by TK there, I think.
it was.
She
It
ends up
was so smart. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was like yelling at my TV, like, Asia, go down. Like, I can see you're on a hill. What the heck? Like, what the heck, Hobag? Like, just go down the path. Like, you're wearing shoes. You're fine. You
Yeah.
know? And this is just a little spoiler. They tell you before you start the game that there's no like natural predators, and like the snakes are afraid of you. So like just go through the woods. What are you? It's $1 million. What are you doing? I don't know. That got me so riled up. And also it made me love TK. TK is like, I can't pick just one winner pick, but I'm really rooting for him. And so I was like, oh, this is a man that forges his own path, which I actually think Asia might have. Was she the one that says that at the beginning? I'm going to forge my own path or something.
Maybe.
And then she's literally looking for the path, and I'm like, again, the math ain't mathing, my friend.
I didn't even put that together. That's hysterical.
That was great.
These editors know what they're doing, because I was like, you're lying to yourself because you're literally looking for the path when you could just like tuck and roll down the hill, like, what are you doing? Anyway.
I do love, speaking of Asia, that they put 2 podcasters on this season, though.
Yeah.
Because John has apparently his very own famous podcast.
Yeah.
I remember at Ural's finale, they showed the preview for the season, and everyone was freaking out. John Lovett was on it, and I had to look up who he was. But he's famous. And Asia, as we later learn, works over at RHAP. So I love that they have 2 podcasters on there.
I
And
do too.
entirely different worlds within the same industry too.
I think the next one should be two people from the same show, and it should be this show. But
Just mix it up. To bring it back about like Mariah, Mo, and me.
yeah,
Kenzie told me that she thought there was a weird blood versus water thing because we apparently when we were getting on the plane, they said they sit us in LAX and they're like, don't sit by each other. But apparently I just sat right next to Mo, which I didn't even notice. Like, I don't remember. And she told me after the game, she was like, yeah, I thought you and Mo were sisters. I said, what? She's like, you were sitting right next to her. And I thought, oh, just because they're related, they get to break the rules because they're our team captains or something. And so she thought going into the game, there was going to be this twist.
like
That's
one
funny.
singular blood versus water pair.
Right. Just some
Huh.
random chicks.
Just based off of like if like having not met the two of you or no, I could see that impression though. You guys do kind of look alike.
Yeah, I think we look alike enough,
Yeah,
especially when you're watching TV, especially in those first few episodes when there's so many people, right? Like
yeah,
it's so different, at top 8, it's like, oh, we've seen these people every
Yeah.
week
Yeah.
for like 2 months versus, the first 3 or 4 episodes. It's like, wait, was that Gabe or Andy? Who
yeah.
was John?
I literally wrote in my notes because what gets me is the tribe names at first. I have to write down. I wrote down what color was what tribe.
Right. Oh yeah. I could not remember Siga's tribe name until like day 20.
That's funny.
I was like, what? I was like, it was like Sega or something. Like
No,
I could not, y'all, I did not do like if it didn't matter to like winning, I just thought like it shouldn't be in my brain right now.
I do love.
Anyway,
Yeah, a bit side. I do love that 46 simultaneously had Siga, who was like vibing together, and then had Nami, who like the two of us were saying like, what is going to happen if these go to tribal council? There is so many like everything's going every
yeah. Yeah, and I feel like is it? What's the red tribe? Loco?
Yeah.
Lavo, I think.
Lavo. I knew it wasn't Loco.
Yeah,
Lavo, I feel like might be the hot mess tribe that Nami was, right? Like
yeah,
It's very
Rome
possible.
is upside down in the water well in the middle of the day. Everyone's gonna see his clothes are soaking wet. What is he thinking? Teeny says to Genevieve, I don't know, let's wait it out. I think
yeah.
these little microaggressions, if they end up going on a winning streak, might drive them mad come merge.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So we finished the task. TK does get the key, and we kind of talked about it earlier. He gets the key, and while he's like trying to untie it, Asia tries to like wrestle him for it for like a second or try to pull it away. And he says, no, don't do that. And she stops. But
Yeah, what I would have been like, LOL,
No.
and like
Yeah.
might have jumped on his back. I don't know.
I don't, that was fun. But we go back to Yellow Camp.
Mhm.
And what are your all's thoughts on Annika? Because like the Castros, I really liked what her answers, but I was kind of afraid of her getting that like next Parvati target that a lot of young women get, and that like with your all's premieres, Randon I think said that about Venus even. But I kind of
Mhm.
like what we're seeing from Annika so far, even though she's like immediately jumped into the leadership role that she said she didn't want.
What do
Yeah,
you
I,
think, Brett?
yeah, I really like her position in the game. She is on my fantasy team, so that kind of helps. But I think that she's going to be in that leadership role within this tribe. I do question whether her decision making in the end result was necessarily the best because of what we see with Andy
Yeah,
and his position within the show. I think that we just talked about Red potentially being that messy tribe, but I think this tribe could easily be two based on the first decision.
yeah,
So I do think that she's potentially in a good position, but I'm not sure if this tribe will be stable enough for the long term to get her deep into the game from what I've seen so far. But as we all know, that could change one episode to the next for anybody here.
Right. Yeah, I don't really have an opinion on her yet. I did like that she was like, wasn't trying to be the leader, but these goons kind of need me to step up or whatever. And
Yeah.
to me, leader is not a bad word in Survivor. Like, if you are a good leader,
Yeah,
if you're a manager, right? Like, there's a difference between being a leader and being a manager.
Yeah.
So,
that's a good point.
and it's like even looking at season 46, and this is no shade, but like Quintavious Q is a manager. He
Yeah.
tries to manage people, right? If you are not with him, you are against him type of attitude. There was even a secret scene where he's, telling everyone, oh, so and so is this. Ben is dangerous because of this. Kenzie is this. And he says, Liz, I'm not sure what to make of Liz. That's because I'm a leader. Like, I know
Yeah.
how to get behind people and push them,
Yeah.
in a certain direction. And I do think Annika's, am I pronouncing it right?
Annika, I believe.
Annika, thank you. So Annika, I do feel like she does have the potential to be a leader and not a manager. So hopefully,
Yeah.
she realizes that in the game and uses
Yeah.
it to her advantage.
I do love that secret scene you mentioned from Q though, just because like partway through our recaps last season, I started calling him Coach Burdette because he was reminding me of Coach half the time.
Yes.
And that little secret scene very much fits the coach thing that I think of with him. So, so our next scene is we go back to Tuku and TK is coming back with the supplies. And man, he gets a great greeting when he comes back. And Caroline quickly mentions that TK and the guys are like all bonding very quickly and it's a bromance is forming, as she puts it. So he's fitting in really quickly.
He definitely is. And I hope that Caroline, because she seems to be in a bit, because she seems to be tight with Sue so far, and Sue seems like she's in a good position. Hopefully, she can throttle that paranoia about the bros and it doesn't bite her in the butt, right? If
Yeah.
she's, look at that bromance, look at that bromance, and she doesn't know that Sue is so tight with Saul, that could bite her, right? So hopefully, she's able to like manage that paranoia.
And Gabe does have a messy episode, but I think what you mentioned there about Sue being so tight with Gabe is going to help him. I think she can help ground and slow him down a little bit. But the next thing we see before we go back to Lavo is Gabe does find a beware advantage. And he's looking for and this is where the messy starts. And this is where the bromance, you kind of start to question if that's can keep going. Because TK catches Gabe trying to pull a key off of a vine. And Gabe's response is, oh, I just saw that key up there. I don't know what it goes to. And thinks TK will believe that. And TK plays it off well. He pretends to believe it, but like, what?
Those not just random keys out in the middle of the jungle.
Yeah.
Right. That would be, it's hard. I mean, I didn't even bother looking for an idol half the time. But sometimes, I'd be like scanning and I'm like, wow, it's impossible to see anything. Especially it was so far up. At that point, you just have to confess.
Yeah.
It's like when you are the boss and you make a mistake, like you're going to earn more rapport if you just say, oh crap, I messed up. Here's how I messed up. Here's how we can move forward.
Yeah.
So if he would have told the whole truth, I think that would have been like a final two situation. You know what I mean? Like, oh my gosh, I know you just caught me, bro. This is how my day's gone. Help me. And it's not ideal, right? But that's why they call them beware advantages. Like they are dangerous. And so when you're caught on Survivor, I think the only thing you can do to build that trust is just to tell the freaking truth.
Yeah, absolutely. This just made me have a flashback because we see this like key right on the edge of a cliff there. And I'm like, wait, is this the same place that Angelina got caught with a ladder all those years ago?
Oh, I forgot about that.
Dude, probably. It
Yeah.
is also the same place where so Yanu, the Purple Tribe on season 46, they they didn't have shelter, like they didn't have fire or anything. And they were like sleeping next to and under this rock because it was
Oh
like the
wow.
only place they could take shelter.
Do they tell you guys that like previous tribes have been there? Because like with 45 at this tribe swap, Bruce was like, "Oh, this is the same camp I went back to on 44."
Oh yeah, no, they don't. I mean, production does not talk to you. They
Yeah.
really try not to interact. Of course, like when you go for your walks, like your one-on-ones, your confessionals,
Yeah.
I'm sure they talk more, but to be honest with you, I think my energy was like so low and also I was so focused on the game. Like we got out of the game and Kenzie, this is why she won. She's like, bye Bruce, bye Brett, bye this, bye. And I'm like, how do you even know their names? And she's like, well, I'm talking to them. And I'm like, oh, I just want to talk about the game. Like my head was so, I think that's also why it was devastating when I lost. Like I was so like this, but
Yeah.
so I don't know if I would have asked like, oh, is this this tribe? If they would have answered. I don't know. I never even thought
Yeah.
to ask.
Yeah.
No, I figured the answer was no, but like after seeing Bruce on 45 too, the thought question just popped in. So after seeing this weird scene with TK and Gabe, which by the way, Gabe, you said TK was someone you probably wanted to work with. So what
Yeah.
I don't know. But we go back to Lavo, and Asia is completely honest with her tribe. She tells what happened. It seems to go over well. Like they don't seem to really be upset with her or anything. I mean, she didn't quit halfway through like a certain first boot did last season, but I it
No comment. No comment.
things seem to go over pretty well for Asia here. And then we see the scene where Teeny recognizes her from RHAP and says she's smart and how much stuff she catches that like most people wouldn't catch, and that makes Teeny want to work with her, which I'm kind of torn on because I kind of get you need to have someone like that, but going to the end with someone that catches is so smart, knows so much, that can be dangerous. That's probably someone that can beat me if I'm going to the
I
end.
really like this, especially when we tie it into the last scene that we just talked about with Gabe, is that in this case we have a situation where Teeny catches on to Asia's background, but at the same time doesn't just decide I'm going to start telling the entire tribe, but rather tells her in order to try to build her trust.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think the same, Brett. I think she doesn't actually mean it. Like, well, she means it as a fan, but it's like also I've got your number, girlfriend.
Yeah.
Like this can only last for so long.
It's very very well played episode for Teeny. Almost every scene we see of her, I'm like, oh, that's smart. They're playing that really well.
Yeah.
And so right after this is when we see our third messy. Like each tribe had a messy player. It felt like, and this is where the beginning of Rome becoming that, because Rome finds his beware advantage, and we don't see him looking for it yet, but that's quite the trip when we get there soon. We go back to Tuku really quickly, and Gabe is telling Sue about the advantage that he found. And at first, I'm like, I don't know if I like that or not, but the more I thought of it, I'm like, yeah, I like this for him. For the reasons he said earlier. She's older, she's more mature. She'll keep him grounded. I'm starting to see that he can be kind of messy. I think she can help him clean that up a little bit. So bringing knowledge to her is probably a good move for him, I think.
Yeah.
Smart. And I mean, this is the age-old debate, right? Of like, should you tell someone? And of course, it's easy for us to say, like, no, don't ever tell anyone. But also, if you find something like that so quick in the game, I feel like, certain people might just feel so desperate to make a connection
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
sharing information, might be the way to go, right? Like, oh, I feel okay, but I definitely want to like solidify something with someone. And then on the flip side, if you don't tell someone, like for example, I caught wind that Venus was telling Charlie, "Oh, I might have something up my sleeve." And I was like, "I have been with you every single day,
Yeah.
through every single tear, through
Yeah.
every single breakdown you've had, and you're telling Charlie?
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
goodbye." Like,
Yeah.
I was more than, like, Applebee's pissed. I was so, like I felt so betrayed that I was like, I this morning I told you I wanted final 3, now I want you gone immediately." And
Yeah.
so I don't think it's necessarily bad to share information those first few days if you have it.
Yeah. It's Yeah, I enjoyed watching Venus, but I can definitely tell where like playing with her would get frustrating a few times. But you guys were such a good cast. I loved watching you guys play, especially the later episodes.
Yeah.
But so we have Sue playing lookout for Gabe, trying to find this box, and she signals to him someone's coming, and right as they're coming, no, this wasn't where he dropped it. This is where he like runs off the path into this little cave, and he has the opportunity. He opens the second box, only to find out there's a third box inside of it. That if he does a third task, he has an idol good till final 5. And he passes up that chance and keeps the idol that's good for 3 tribals. And I think that's a smart decision, especially
Yeah,
with dropping the first box down a rocky hill very loudly. I don't know how trying to find a third box would have gone for him.
exactly.
Yeah, I think it's super smart, especially if he doesn't have his vote, right? That's
Yeah.
part of the beware advantage.
Yeah.
And so you think maybe, maybe we have to go to tribal council today or tomorrow. And then I actually do have to fess up about this advantage because I don't have my vote, or I have to
Exactly.
try to play it cool and hope it all works out anyway. So it's a really, really risky. So I was again screaming. I was like, "Just take it, just take it."
And
Like,
if
Yeah.
you're
you're in a
so messy, dude. Just take it.
That's exactly it. And if you're in a 4-2 and someone loses their vote, instantly a 3-2 means only one person has to be convinced to change their mind to flip the whole thing, as opposed to run the risk of going to rocks, which is a world of a difference in calculating how to go forward.
Yeah. Real quick,
Mhm.
last couple things before the immunity challenge is at Lavo, we see Rome immediately going into the woods looking for Idol, looking for his little key to the box, I guess. And the rest of the tribe is onto him. They notice he's out walking. Asia stumbles upon him in the woods. And he finds out his key is in the well, and he's like diving into it. And they don't catch him in the well like I thought they would, but they see him standing by it like shortly after. And instead of like trying to play it off cool or say anything, he just kind of walks off without saying anything, which is probably the worst move he could have made. But
Literally,
Yeah.
what he should have done was ripped off his because he was soaking wet. So I imagine that's why he just walked away because he didn't want
uh,
people to see him soaking wet, right?
yeah,
And so what I would have done is on my canteen, like ripped it because they come off like really easily, the cap. Like there's
Mm,
just like one string. And so they break. I would have like tried to rip it and been like, "Oh, my cap walk," like made up any excuse.
yeah,
Like, "Oh, my
yeah, exactly.
cap fell into the well." Like, and then I probably would have gotten back in the well to like just, ham it up or whatever. Um,
but
I don't know. I would have made something up because I agree with what Bruce just said about like that was the worst thing. Like that, you're just like sentencing yourself to survivor hell right
Yeah.
now,
yeah,
bro.
yeah, he it reminded me a little bit. It's a more extreme version, but with 45 when they caught Reba catches like Sifu spying in the woods in the
Hmm.
first couple episodes. Like, I feel like this is a worse move than what Sifu did, but that was what was running through my mind.
It's so funny though. Like the memes of his like like legs in the air, and it's like, you know, the narrator saying like, "So you're probably wondering what I'm doing here." Like,
Yeah.
it's so funny.
So the last scene before the immunity challenge is it got it. It's the middle of the night, and Andy decides to pull Rachel aside for a night chat that she very clearly wants no part of, which is understandable based on what she said. But all I was thinking of was Kenzie with Ben last scene, and I'm wearing my Mermaid Dragon T-shirt, by the way. And like the middle of the night chats of Kenzie just kind of calming Ben down, guiding him through stuff. I'm like, I get Rachel not wanting to be part of a pulled aside chat in the middle of the night, but being so obvious about not wanting to be a part of it might not be the best move. Like, this is still someone you need to have a bond with, probably.
Yeah, what do you think, Brett?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't pick up on that at the time, but it could go either way. You're right about it's someone that you might need to have a bond with and that you don't want to show that disinterest. At the same time, how many people on this show have we seen become the first boot, not because they do anything wrong strategically or in challenges, but just because they're not fitting in with the rest of the tribe and kind of annoying people. And if it's the first night and I've just flown in from America to Fiji and done all the pregame press, and now I'm done the marooning, competed in a challenge, and you at some point you just want to sleep.
Yeah,
So
no, I get that
nighttime
for
might
sure.
not be the best. I know that wouldn't be if I was playing, when I would be trying to have discussions with people, especially if they weren't interested at all.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So my take, well, number one, I was rooting for Rachel. Rachel was season 46 alternate.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I was like, let's go. And the moment and I'm gonna say this and it's public, whatever, like it gave me the ick, as the cool kids say. I couldn't believe she was so, I don't know, like the opposite of empathetic to this
Mm,
person who's clearly struggling.
Yeah,
yeah.
Like, and I know how I looked out there, you know, but like that would have been like if I went on the journey with Ben and Banu's literally on his knees crying, and I was like, get up, you know,
Yeah.
like,
yeah,
you know, and I don't know you, you know, it was so weird to me that she would think that would hurt her game. And honestly, like it was giving paranoia to me, because someone who is like that, like you have no TV, you have no phones, you have nothing to distract you. And I mentioned that to say, like, you can pick up on someone's vibe or energy, or, you know, they say, like, you walk in the room, you can cut the tension with a knife. Like, you can feel energy.
Yeah.
And you can feel when someone's paranoid or being shady about the game versus when they are having like an actual mental like issue, right? Where they're
Sure.
actually just really upset about something that has absolutely nothing to do with Survivor,
yeah,
right? And so for me, like it gave me the ick because he just wanted to talk. It wasn't like he wanted to talk about the game. Like, yes, okay, it's a coincidence or whatever that earlier that day he had said, "Oh, well, let's get up in the morning and chat." But like he's so kind of innocent to me that it's like I don't even think he wants to talk about the game. Like
yeah,
That's a good
he's
point.
just feeling so out of his skin, which we find later, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
And for her to not be able to pick up on that and to not even like be able to predict like, oh, I can just tell them he's having a really hard time and they'll believe me because that's actually the truth. For her to be so paranoid about that on what, night 2,
Yeah.
yeah.
it gave me the ick, to be quite honest.
And
I could not believe it. It was jaw on the floor.
I hope she does well, partly because she's on my fantasy tribe, but and she seems fun. But yeah, I didn't like that move from her. And again, the thought that popped into my head was just little things like this, or like with Ben last night. Oh, this is a large part of Kenzie winning. It's just being very social and there for everyone. Because I mean,
Yeah.
we saw her with Ben in the middle of the night so many times. Like they kind of just
Right.
realized even
Right.
more how good she was at the little things that we as fans don't always notice or think about.
Yeah, and then to even be watching our season and see that Ben and Kenzie thing, and I mean, I know she didn't see the way it played out, but not to be like, "Oh, I need someone who I can emotionally support, who
Yeah.
will support me in the game."
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was
So,
just like, "Girl, no."
yeah. Right after that, we get to the immunity challenge, which is a fun challenge. They need to swim out to a boat and paddle it back, gathering 3 heavy treasure chests on the way back. Then they put together a puzzle after that. The
Yeah,
boat
this
seemed to be the hard part. 2 of their tribes not only overturned their boats, but then had to fish the heavy treasure chests out of the water against water resistance. This was such a crazy challenge, but so
yeah,
fun to
this
watch.
this was a great challenge to watch. Brought me back to like some of the challenges that we've seen them do this in like the first 10 seasons. So that
Yeah,
was neat.
Yeah, it was so good, and it makes me think that so remember in season, what was it, 42, when Jonathan
Yeah.
basically got his whole tribe, and then they
yeah,
were like they just brought the other tribes to shore and, like, skipped that step. They were like, "Okay, this is the weather's too bad." I think that they because the way it was edited, it was like, "Oh, whoever" I can't remember the tribe name, like, "wins whatever," and they were so far ahead, and then suddenly everyone was just on shore. I have a feeling like they paused and just brought them to shore because they were just drowning or whatever. That's my
yeah.
feeling because of the way it was edited, but
I
go
love that
on.
having to deal with the heavy treasure chests, though. Like, that's a fun twist.
It was so cool. It just sucks they were, like, drowning.
It's not a giant 500-pound lizard, but it's still cool.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
so cool. I think maybe the chests were like just that much too heavy. And
Yeah,
once you capsize, like you're done pretty much.
yeah.
That's
pretty
what it felt
much.
like. But it
But
was fun.
so Lavo ends up winning, and as Tuku and Gata are trying to finish, this is where we start to see Andy unfold a little bit. He just kind of walks off to the side and falls down in the shade. And
Yeah.
medical's checking him out. He just overheated, I think is what it was.
I,
But
I think that's what it absolutely was just the heat. And I mean that's totally fair. There was about 5 seconds in there where I was like, wait, is he just quitting? But
yeah,
once we realized that he wasn't okay, then yeah, it makes perfect sense that for him to one take care of himself before anything with the challenge. We've seen what happened with Caleb in the same thing so many times back in Korong.
yeah,
But at the same time, I like the fact that at least for now we are just continuing with the challenge because at that point they're right at the final stage of it. Jeff's
Right.
still letting them play. We're not stopping only to have 2 tribes that are basically tied and probably 2-3 minutes away from being done have the whole challenge interrupted when they can then start piecing together what the rest of the challenge is while medical is dealing with Andy.
yeah,
Yeah, I totally agree, Brett. I think it's more exciting when or and also like more survivor when it's like, okay, well, one of your tribe mates is out, but like this challenge is still on.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like this is Survivor, as Jeff loves to say. So I also liked when they just kept going with the challenge. It was like, well, this is what it gave you, and
yeah,
you got to deal with it.
I love that you mentioned him saying this is Survivor because I watched it Wednesday night. Then my mom hadn't watched it, so I watched it with her last night. And one thing me and her both said is like in challenge when someone's struggling and he'll be like, "This is Survivor," or random things. I'm like, it really like you. It doesn't mean anything, but the way he says it, it sounds exciting. It just, like,
that's
Listen, as a
or when he
player,
says
it
like,
is
"That's where the game
motivating.
hits you," I'm like,
Oh my gosh, Bruce, this is why I love you. Like that's so funny. It doesn't really mean anything. I will tell you just so in 46 we had that poll challenge
yeah,
yeah,
and everyone was like on the pole and I was like shaking. I was so hungry and like so depleted. And I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not on the pole yet. Because everyone is like already like basically hanging on. And I was like, I'm not going to do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. And Jeff was like, Liz, you came all the way to Fiji. You left your 8-year-old daughter to do this. He said, I'm not telling you what to do. You don't have to do it. But like, are you serious right now? And I was like, okay, fine. And then, like it's so wide now, like I could barely do this. And then the second they were like, ran away with the ladders, you can tell the cameras are rolling. I immediately started going down. I was like, and that's so funny. Q even beat me down. So, but yeah, it really is motivating. Like, this is Survivor, dig deep. It really does help.
So Tuku ends up finishing second in the challenge. And as we're like, Jeff is wrapping up, is where Andy starts to unfold. And I saw this meme a couple times yesterday. Brett was the one that sent it to me, but it's the meme from The Office where it says like, find the difference between these two pictures, and then it's Pam saying they're the same picture. And
Yeah.
it was Andy and Banu on the two pictures.
Literally.
Like, to be fair, we got 3 whole episodes of this from Banu. I don't think Andy's is going to be that much.
I don't think so. But I will, the two Banu's, testament, he never did that like in front of us where he was like, Kenzie, he did that at the journey with Ben and I, but it wasn't like in front of everyone. So I will, I'll give him his roses. But yes, very.
I love Banu.
I do
very
too.
likable person, it seems, on TV.
Very. I could not believe he was just spewing like that. Like, sir, you're on. I was screaming at it. I was like, get your head in the game. It's $1 million. Don't you need the $1 million? Like, oh my gosh, you'd think for $1 million you could, wait 5 seconds for them to leave.
Well, and it's saying you're on the bottom, no one likes you. It's after already bonding with John, so it's not true that no one likes you. It's the reason you think you're on the bottom is they didn't cheer when you opened a coconut. And then
I'm laughing, but it's also everything on Survivor is so serious. I mean, like I said, there's no TV, there's no phone, there's no like you don't even have a chair to sit in. Nothing is so your mind does go to those places, but it was hysterical the way the editors.
I think
that was a good part.
The cherry on top of all of this is when he says, "Yeah, my best friend I've made on this tribe is John." I was thinking of during the challenge ways I was going to throw him under the bus to save myself.
That's so funny. But when he said that, I was like, well, why would he throw John under the bus? Because I thought everybody must love John, but then it was like, oh, there must be something he is picking up on that he knows he needs to throw his best friend under the bus. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes it is like that. It was like, it's you or me, and there's no other. There's no other way to do it.
And if that ended up being a good read, it came down to the two of them. So, so
there was no chance of it being Annika, despite a little bit of what we heard back at camp.
Yeah, no. So Andy speaks to the tribe as soon as they get back, kind of apologizes, says that like mentally he was still recovering from overheating. He was probably at about like 80% there at that point. So like, okay, but still, like even at 80%, not the smartest move you could have made. But right after that apology and everyone seems good, John calls Andy messy in a confessional right after, but is still afraid that people are going to come after him and that he's a bit paranoid. So he needs to go check on that. And they say, yes, it's Andy, but you're the decoy because he's pitted himself against you.
You never want to be the decoy in this show because that is usually the person who ends up going out when it's too obvious.
Right. Like, oh, don't worry. We're, it's not really you.
And You mentioned that it was never gonna be Annika. John and despite Andy saying Andy threw him under the bus and he's messy, John's trying to help Andy. The two of them go to Sam and try to bring him in to get Annika. And I love the way Sam plays this. Like he says, yeah, okay. And then in the confession, I was like, yeah, no chance. Like he doesn't immediately shoot it down right to them.
Yeah.
But
Right.
kind of
And that's exactly how you want to play.
Yes, a wolf in wolf's clothing.
Yeah, I love that phrase so much. And so we get to tribal, and immediately John mentions that there was kind of a delay to the start of the strategy. And I didn't really think anything of that, but I saw a few looks from other tribe mates as he said that. I'm like, okay, this is interesting.
Yeah. Well, what I caught on to, and this comes from my dad at the same time that he was watching, but you just start to see John talking and talking more and talking more, and we go right away, oh, John's in White House mode again.
Yeah.
And
yeah, he's a great talker, isn't he?
Yeah. But then we're like, he might be in trouble. Oh, wait, Jeff shut it down. He's probably okay. Andy's going, no, wait, he's not.
My theory about this tribal was, I feel like it felt pretty 50-50 going into tribal based on the edit who was going home. I think John might have sunk himself at tribal because there was a few times he said something and like his tribe mates all like had looks up on their faces about
That's
it. I don't think he had a good tribal, and I think that might be what cost him.
Yeah, I don't know. The conspiracy theorist in me, because we don't really actually see Andy throw him under the bus, right?
Yeah.
But he must have, right? He must have. So my theory is, because he also says like, oh, your podcast is pretty big, right?
Yeah.
So my theory is like, hey guys, you don't know this guy. He like, I have a feeling he knew who he was.
Yeah.
And was like, this guy's a professional speechwriter. He's famous. You know, dot 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 dot. He's got,
and
like,
that just makes him an easy target.
Right. And then at tribal, he's talking really well, and they're like, you know, oh crap, that's true. Like, let's just get him out now.
Yeah. I will say the one thing John did say at tribal where I'm like, ooh, he kind of got him there a little bit was when Andy's like, oh, look at all these people Andy threw under the bus. And John immediately goes, well, you really only threw one person under the bus. But
right.
I'm like,
I love that.
Ouch.
I loved that.
So John does end up going home. I don't like it. He seemed like a really fun character. This whole cast seems really fun so far. But he ends up going home. This was a great premiere episode, though.
Yeah.
Great premiere. Brett, what did you think about the first boot?
Like I was mentioning, I was a bit surprised just based on everything that went on earlier that Andy wasn't just the obvious boot, but I do agree with what we were saying that it could have been either way and that something must have happened that caused John's performance in Tribal to sink himself. If they didn't have any information about John, and even if this is going back all the way to the first seconds of the game, if Jeff didn't even kind of hint at it, that maybe made some discussion start, it could have been totally different. Because we even see that at the marooning, that John's like, I'm a podcast host. And you can see that about 3 or 4 people right away are like, yes, I know this guy.
Yeah, that makes sense. For me, I loved this first boot. I was praying for this first boot. The second I saw him and people were like, oh my gosh, he's this famous podcaster, I was like, gosh, I hope he goes first. Because and not in a bad way, but I don't know. I like when like normal, regular people play. And
yeah, true.
I thought like, oh, is he going to be this cocky person? And then his confessionals came out and I was like, oh, and this is coming from Liz Wilcox, who many people thought was insufferable. I thought, oh, this guy is going to be insufferable. when he's like, "It's worse for me than it is for you," I was like, "No, it's not. I do not want you on my screen for 3 months." And I know that's terrible. And John, if you're watching, love you, call me, hashtag Survivor fam. But I don't like when one player dominates
Yeah,
like all the screen time. I want to hear from a lot of people.
agreed.
And I felt like he is such a natural narrator. We would probably get everything from his point of view if he
Yeah.
even if he didn't win, you know? And I was like, I don't know if I like his point of view already.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I think the reason he goes home over Andy could just be as simple as it's physical. In the pre-merge, you're trying to stay away from tribal. Andy's bigger and stronger and wasn't great in that challenge, but more often than not, it's more likely to be more helpful in a challenge, I feel like. So it might
Yeah.
just be that simple.
Yeah, I want to like laugh about the challenge thing, right? Like, oh, we got to
Yeah.
keep tribe strong, and this is the guy that almost passed out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, it's
exactly.
not
But
as
at
simple
the
as that.
same, you're right. But at the same time, going back to my other, I guess I'm just full of conspiracy theories, like that they probably dragged those boats, like production probably just like said skip that step or something. He probably had swallowed a lot of salt water too. And because he's the biggest guy or whatever, they were probably counting on him to like work twice as hard to like
Mhm.
flip the boat, get people back in the boat. So I will give him the benefit of the doubt that that was in their tribe mate's mind of like,
Yeah.
well, this was just a really crazy challenge that no one could do. And no
Yeah.
wonder
Yeah.
he was probably trying super hard and no wonder he almost passed out.
That's a good point.
So to wrap
give him
up
another
what's
shot.
been a fantastic episode, last season we didn't do it for 45. We introduced a power ranking segment last season, but it's way too many people to do a full ranking, so we're going to do top and bottom of who we think's in the best and worst spot. Do you want to start, Brett?
Sure. Top, I really like this movement that's going on Red, where there's so many options. So I'm gonna put Teeny as number one. For everything I said, I'm gonna put Andy at the bottom.
I actually agree. I'm going to put Teeny at 1. I think she's in a really good spot. If she doesn't tell everyone that she wants everyone to be their number 1 and doesn't make it to where if they compare notes, she's done. But I think she had a great premiere. And I think it's recoverable, but I think Andy's on the bottom right now. And I was arguing in my head between him and Rome, but I'm going to go with him.
All right, that's fair. I think best, I'm toss up between Sam and Sue. I think
I like that.
Sam is playing a very like gentle, relaxed game, but from what we've seen in his confessionals, he really knows what's going on. And Sue, it seems like everyone kind of wants to partner. Sue is Teeny without Teeny. She is becoming that, oh, I want to talk to her. I want to talk to her. And worse, I'm gonna go with Rome because my guy and I love Rome. He's the only person I've talked to from this new cast. But oh my gosh, that was a bombshell of an episode for him. It's walking away from the water well for me. That's so suspicious.
Yeah.
And we didn't see any of his recovery from that. So to me, whereas with Andy, they've had tribal, that's kind of like, the wound is closing, so to speak. And now he's playing a new game tomorrow where Rome is still playing the same game.
Yeah, I think Andy probably had a worse episode, but his is a lot more recoverable. I think Rome is in a lot more trouble going forward.
Right. We
This
shall
was
see.
A fun episode, Liz. Thank you so much for taking.
Yes, thank you so much, Liz.
Thank you for listening to our show, however you found it. And with that being said, grab your torches and head back to camp. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, friends.